Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here today, gathering to remember and celebrate the life and mourn the death of Rosie Jimenez, who was the first person to pass away due to an illegal abortion after the Hyde Amendment passed. Thank you again so much for taking the time out of your day to come and strongly demand the repeal of the Hyde Amendment. I'm up here with my comrade and associate Sophia. I'm Katie. I'm here representing the Seattle Democratic Socialists of America and Seattle Clinic Defense, and two organizations that are fed up to the back teeth with how reproductive rights are, how people are being treated and the ways people's bodies are controlled and commodified. And we would like to call to an end for all that. And so I'll let Sophia introduce herself. Yep.
So thank you, Katie. As Katie said, my name is Sophia Lee, and I'm the board chair of Gender Justice League. We are right there in that corner. Guys, anyways, yeah. Gender Justice League is a transgender civil rights organization that's based right here in Seattle. As Katie said, we are here because of Rosie Jimenez and the Hyde Amendment. The Hyde Amendment, which passed in 1977, ended federal funding for abortion and cut off millions of low-income people from safe access to reproductive health care. Even though we get around it at the state level in Washington State here, the Hyde Amendment, as well as a host of terrifying state-level restrictions, are still in effect throughout the country. We fought like hell to get Roe, and we're going to have to fight like hell to keep it, and expand meaningful and safe access to the right of bodily autonomy.
Hell yeah. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. Also, don't be shy. Scooch up on up here. You're going to want to hear all this. Yeah, but also we are not just here to, abortion is one facet in the whole kind of constellation of control of our bodies, our lives, our community's rights to self-determination. We're also calling for, you're going to hear more about this later, but we're calling an end to forced sterilization in prisons. We're calling for an end. What? No, we're calling for a beginning to gender-affirming Medicare for all. So people, guess what? It's abortion is healthcare. Healthcare's a right. Run and tell that one. Yep, and we're also calling for example, not just someone's right to, choose when or if they become a parent, but also to raise children in a safe and accepting society. We're calling for free, round-the-clock childcare. That's right. We've got the money. Anyway, but we have some amazing speakers here for you tonight. Also, don't be shy. We've got a lot of commuters around here, and they did not sign up for this, but that is too bad. They're going to get it. Yeah, it is.
They should join us because we are awesome.
Exactly. Come on. Don't be shy, everybody. Don't go to Mukilteo. Come stay here. Anyway, it's my honor to introduce to you our next speaker, Marumora Villalpando, who is an undocumented community organizer and co-founder of La Resistencia, a grassroots community group working to end all detention and all deportations in Washington State. It's an amazing group. She's an amazing organizer. Give her a hand.
Hi. Yeah, well, let's take advantage of the crowd that doesn't know what is coming. So my name is Maru Mora Villalpando. I'm an undocumented immigrant. I've been here for over 20 years. ICE is trying to deport me, but we're fighting back. We're fighting back not only because I want to stay here and I have the right to stay here with my family and my community, but we're fighting to ensure that there's no people detained, there's no people in cages, and there's no people deported, period. There is a really important intersection of reproductive justice and immigration, because Rosie, as many others, have been victims just because we happen to be low-income immigrants. How many people of color have been used to test medicine, to test contraceptives? How many women of color have been sterilized against their will? So we as communities of color happen to be always at the forefront of these oppressions. And immigration is not isolated from this. under this regime, we have seen young women that have tried to get abortions while they're in detention and they have been denied. We have seen how young women in detention are denied the basic medical care that they require. We've seen how parents are separated from their children, and that in itself is against the fact that that is reproductive justice, to stay with your child, right, and not be deported. So for us, it's really critical to be here, speaking behalf of reproductive justice, speaking behalf of your right to choose your and decide on your own body. But it's also important to think about our larger community. For us, reproductive justice means you have the right to choose whether to have a family, and if you have the decision to have a family, you should choose how and when, and you should have support from the entire community to have your child. It takes a village, right? And for us, deportations is one of those ways that goes against families, right? Family unities. We also express the need for the shutting down of the detention center in Tacoma now. It has to happen immediately. Right now, there's 1,575 people there, including men and women. And we have been receiving reports of maggots in the food every day since March. We learned recently that some of the maggots are not only inside the meat or inside the fruit that is given to them, they're also growing in the trays. The trays of food are so old and cracked, and they're not really that they're growing inside the trays. So when people get their food and the food is served on them, they see the maggots in the cracks of the trays. ICE is desperate right now. Immigration enforcement is desperate. They've been doing a PR campaign for the past 2-3 weeks. They invited media to the detention center. They held a press conference at their building in Tukwila, saying that they're the victims, that they're being harassed. Cry me a river, ICE. If anybody knows about victimization, if anybody knows about violence, it's us. And that violence is being inflicted through them. They are the ones that have been violent against our communities, and they have one single goal, which is to destroy our communities. Reproductive justice is life. It really is about, right? And immigration enforcement needs to end because it's the opposite of that. They're trying to destroy our communities, and one way we can stop that destruction is to shut down the detention center, not to better conditions. You know, I'm all for support of people in prison and having medical care they need, but I'm actually for no prisons altogether. People should not be in prisons. People should not be caged. No matter if it's private or governmental run, there should be no cages. And people should receive their medical care, their universal medical care that we all require, because we're all human beings, regardless of, you know, our age or our gender or our nationality. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I hope that those didn't expect this learn some today. And just gonna take advantage of this. October 8th, we're gonna be outside the City Hall in Tacoma. We're gonna launch our campaign against the detention center. You're invited. Please come to the detention center as well on October 12th. We're gonna have a big rally at noon. And you know, why not? Let's bring the idea of reproductive justice right now in every single arena that there is to fight. Our fight to end immigration enforcement includes reproductive justice, because again, that is real life. Thank you.
Thank you, Maru, for reminding us that when we say reproductive justice for all, we mean for all.
Sorry about that.
Welcome.
Oh, I just wanted to, should have done this earlier, but I also did want to just quickly acknowledge that we are having this rally on stolen land, talk about borders. We are standing on the land of the Duwamish people. And just whenever we talk about rights, whenever we talk about like access to life, to civil rights, I do want to acknowledge that we are, the system that we're operating within was founded on a deeply corrupt and violent basis. So just kind of having that in our hearts as we go forward here.
Thank you, Katie. Next, we have Rashid Dickey. Rashida Dickey is speaking tonight on behalf of the Washington State Labor Council, AFL-CIO, which represents over 500,000 workers in our state. Rashia is on the staff of the council where she works in the political department and coordinates this year's union summer program to help train and prepare young organizers in the labor movement. It was through the efforts of the Washington State Labor Council Women's Committee leading the way and bringing forth bringing forth Resolution 31 regarding reproductive freedom and justice, which successfully paved the way at WSL's 2019 convention that Washington State Labor Movement reaffirmed its commitment to reproductive justice and freedom. Thank you.
Hello? Hello? Hi, my name is Rashida Dickey, she, her pronouns, and I am the political intern at the Washington State Labor Council, AFL-CIO. The WSLC, under the leadership of President Larry Brown and Secretary-Treasurer April Sims, is the largest labor organization in Washington State, representing 600 plus locals affiliates and 550,000 union workers all across the state. And I am here today to say that reproductive rights are workers' rights. It is not lost on us that today we are commemorating the life of Rosie Jimenez, a Latina single mother and student who died from an unsafe abortion on this day in 1977. And 42 years later, why are we still fighting for our rights as women to choose? I am a low-income woman of color that graduated from the University of Washington, Seattle, while also working as a unionized banquet server. Unlike Rosie Jimenez, I, as a low-income woman of color in college, was able to access safe, affordable reproductive health care, such as birth control, through Planned Parenthood and Medicaid in Washington State. This can be the difference between life and death. Access to safe reproductive health care, regardless of race, immigration status, age, or gender identification, needs to be upheld. I got involved in the labor movement because they believe in and are committed to equal rights, equal opportunity, and equal freedom for all women. As a black woman and woman of color, I know that due to structural racism, we are the most affected by reproductive health inequities and restrictions of reproductive rights, which I also know is a tool of the state to control black and brown bodies in this country. As the WSLC continues to do work around race and labor and stand true on our value to fight the forces of evil that seek to divide us, we are firmly committed to affirming that reproductive rights are essential to full citizenship, and we will defend and support efforts to obtain and maintain health care for people who can become pregnant, covering all reproductive rights choices, including abortion and contraception. People who work can become pregnant, and people who work should be able to decide if and when they will start a family, because pregnancy impacts wages, benefits, and working conditions. So let me repeat that reproductive rights are workers' rights. And restricting people's reproductive choice directly impedes ability to get and keep work. Outdated social norms on womanhood and motherhood are used as mechanisms of control over our reproductive autonomy. And by breaking down these outdated norms, it will allow people the ability to make an economic choice to take on a cost of $280,000 on average to raise a child. It is our choice, and our choice needs to be protected. Reproductive rights are under attack. As seen by 9 recent laws passed in different states in 2019, that severely restricted and limited access to reproductive choice. These are virtually abortion bans for people without a means to travel or the ability to take time off from work to get and receive reproductive health care. It isn't right, and we are not going to stand for it. We are also not going to stand for our union siblings being publicly vilified and forced to proceed through angry, noisy, and threatening crowds in order to enter healthcare facilities where they work, to do their jobs in providing women and people reproductive health care. There has been an increase of murder, arson, threats, harassment, and intimidation of clients, their friends, and family, the workers in abortion clinics, and the providers of abortion and other lawful birth control methods. This resulted in a Pennsylvania state court ruling this July that security risks for people who work in abortion clinics justified a decision to redact their names and license numbers before making government records available to the public. It is our duty to make sure not only people accessing abortion and reproductive health care, but the workers are safe too. And today I stand here to say that abortion rights are workers' rights. Access to health care is a worker's right. We need reproductive justice and freedom. The Washington State Labor Council, AFL-CIO, affirms that reproductive rights are workers' rights, and we will defend and support efforts to obtain and maintain health care for working people covering all reproductive rights choices, including abortion.
Time.
And reproductive rights are workers' rights.
That's
Thank
right.
you for saying that.
AFL-CIO holding it down for a very long time. Still good, turns out. Yeah, so next we would like to, they're a trailblazing socialist feminist organization. Radical Women is the revolutionary wing of the women's movement and a strong feminist voice in the left. They are in the daily fight against racism, sexism, homophobia, and labor exploitation. They've got it all covered. So Radical Women believes in a multi-issue organizing around the needs of the oppressed, and we're going to hear from them right now. Give them a hand.
Wow. I want to welcome civil, human rights, and women's rights fighters here because you are bold and beautiful, and the eyes of the country are on this movement and what we do now, what we demand, who we support, and who supports us. My name is Muffy Sunday, and I represent Radical Women, and we are the oldest socialist feminist organization in the country. And I say it's really time to go on the offensive. And the collaborative approach between groups and individuals who put on this rally is a good example of how to do that. I grew up in Seattle's Rainier Valley, where the Democratic Party and the Catholic Church sabotaged every bill regarding women's health. This was a time when getting pregnant meant the end of the life that you had planned. What changed was when black women working in the poverty programs, socialists and Radical Women, and others organized the Action Child Care Coalition. They built a massive demonstration at the Capitol in Olympia, and then got a campaign that got the issue on the ballot. That got abortion legalized by popular vote in this state 3 years before Roe versus Wade. And the death toll for women seeking abortions in this state plummeted to 0. Then came the Hyde Amendment, passed with bipartisan support in Congress. Thousands of women have died trying to end a pregnancy. The first was Rosie Jimenez. But then we had a victory in 2006 when the last abortion clinic in Mississippi managed to stay open. It taught us how to organize. A Klan front announced a campaign to close the clinic. Black feminists from Jackson, Mississippi immediately called for a mass response to stop these bigots. I was lucky to be there as part of a multiracial Radical Women contingent. Hundreds of protesters showed up, all ages, races, from across the country and Europe, and from Jackson. We rallied, we marched, we went door to door. We disrupted Klan rallies with noisemakers, and Operation Save America was run out of town, and the clinic, although constantly facing attacks, still stands. But the attacks continue. They escalate. Now women can be prosecuted if they even seek abortions. We win some, the government and the system fights back and tries to take it away. I got a question for the crowd. Don't you want this to be the last abortion rights movement we have to organize? Let's do it. We can do what we've done before, but even better, let's win this time for good. Let's go to our natural allies, women, men, queer and trans folks who are targeted by the same rotten, racist, misogynist system. We should support and reach out to immigrants. There are black parents trying to protect their children from cops. There are strikers faced with deportation, jail, or homelessness. They all need our support, and we all need theirs. We're part of the same class. The list goes on, and if we join hands, we are stronger. We are more militant because we pledge mutual defense. Together, we are the majority. I think we need to stop this endless dance with the Democrats, who, I might add, enabled the Hyde Amendment. They enabled Clarence Thomas, 2 wars in Iraq, and allowed Brett Kavanaugh onto the Supreme Court without a fight, and I could go on, but I won't. Instead, let's target the source, which is the system's hatred of free, independent women and children because they would rather have us working for free or for cheap. Let's name the profit system as the source of the problem and root it out. And we can all unite and reach out to others around the basic demand for reproductive justice that include, but not limited to, repealing the Hyde Amendment now, free abortion including and birth control on demand, an end to forced sterilization, free quality child care and education for all. And I also want to add, because I agree with Maru Mora's original statement, we need to broaden. Radical Women believes, and we think the movement should believe, open the goddamn border. Yeah. And I want to say, if you want to join me in a chant, we won't lose the right to choose. 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 Thank you.
Thank you, Radical Women. One more time. We won't lose the right to choose. We won't lose the right to choose. Oh. Next up, we have, okay. Next up, we have Dr. McKay. Dr. McKay was originally from Louisiana, grew up in the segregated South, and was the first African-American woman to earn a PhD in English from the University of Washington. She had a 40-year teaching career at Tacoma Community College, Lakeside High School, Seattle College, and University of Washington, and is a charter member of the African American Writers Alliance.
Put your hands together!
Dr. McDay.
Good afternoon. I was asked to read a poem, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, and you can decide what the poem says. The title of it is No Baby, No Way, at least not tonight. 15 when she married a man 12 years her senior. She hadn't had any say in the decision to marry. She had less say in the marriage. Husband decided when to have sex, never made love to her. Baby one arrived. She's not quite sure how. She worked from before sunup to beyond sundown. He owned her life like he owned the ground. Both were fertile, both were plowed, both produced, both given, and given some more. Never having a say, being sowed, sowing seeds, having babies, harvesting crops, just as she cropped, collecting eggs, gathering children, sewing clothes, being sewed again, feeding chickens, feeding babies, slopping pigs, cleaning babies, pitching hay, combing hair, cutting wood, picking up babies, making bread, making babies, making beds, raising children, washing, ironing, burying a baby here and there, cooking, cooking, oh, so much cooking. Another baby in her stomach oven, canning jellies, carrying babies, storing jams. So one night, when it was so late she knew he'd come home drunk. She decided there would be no baby tonight. She left the house, hid in the woods, cold and wet. Cold and wet she hid. Hadn't known how cold it could get so late at night. Hadn't thought about the wet of the woods. Wanted to escape the wet on and in her body. So she was safe from another baby. Cold and wet, but safe. Finally he came, drunk as ever, drunk as expected. Reeling, he stumbled in the yard, fell a few more times, but soon he missed her. Not too drunk to know she wasn't there. Called her, slurred her name, just as he had spoiled her. Called some more, all the while ranting when he could get a word out. Still seeking her body, never knew she had a soul. The alcohol ends, sleep comes. When she doesn't hear him, she too sleeps. Happy there is no baby. Satisfied that there is no baby. She knew there would be a price for this obvious defiance, but the young woman had no way of knowing what the price would be. She knew she had to prepare breakfast and to do all the other chores her young body had become accustomed to, or as well as one could be accustomed to. Early the next morning, she slips into the house. He sprawled on the floor, where he almost made it to the bed. He sleeps. She gets bathed up, dressed, and fed. It seemed he'd sleep forever. She went about her countless chores, still not thinking about what would happen, only thinking, no baby tonight. But, of course, he awakened. By now, she was hanging laundry on the line in the sun. She had no idea he had been watching her. Now he slowly and crookedly stumbles and half falls down the steps. She hears him. He's afraid. For the first time today, he does not approach her. Rather, he goes toward a prop, holding up the clothesline. She, who never had a prop, turns to see him approaching her, approaching with that prop from that line. Startled, she stands, seeing what's coming, and yet not seeing what's coming, not watching her, not knowing what to try to protect. He slammed that prop against that little woman, knocking her down. Woman only because Mom always said, you aren't a woman until you have a baby. She crumpled in the fetal position, managing to let out a scream. He hit her until she could make no attempt to escape his licks. He pounded her with the prop. A prop meant to hold up was beating down, but not before he and the prop had pounded her down. The drunkenness saved her. Though strong, he was not as strong as the undrunk man was. He pounded until he himself fell. Hours later, when she awakened, she vaguely remembered what happened. She knew she was wounded, bloody, swollen. Most of all, she knew there would be no baby. Her joy lasted only momentarily because she had to start planning to keep him away again. She would not sleep forever. Her only comfort was knowing inside her was no baby. Not tonight. Thank you.
Oh, hey. I want to thank everyone who came out to this rally today. As the daughter of immigrants, my lived experiences have often come split in two. On one hand, I am the protector of my mother, who leaves the comfort of her own home with prayer and fear knowing her identity will probably be confronted again by strangers in her regular grocery store or medical office. These are the same strangers who preach to her, "This is America," when they hear her accent, not knowing she is a woman who has been here for more than 30 years. She has never been able to find an available in this country, for she is nothing but an immigrant woman who is apparently too uncivilized to make her own decisions, to speak for herself, and act freely in the eyes of her beholder, which are her white neighbors that have made it their personal responsibility and job to keep her accountable to their American values, whatever that may be. And on the other hand, I speak for myself. Whether it be political speeches or managing a group, I feel innocent self-love for these passions of mine, until it is usually tainted with the aftertaste of messages incoming from "find me sexy when in charge," and feel allowed to come on to me before they get a chance to actually understand me, my words, and my values. The same men who find me too much when I disagree and too serious when I tell them that detrimental jokes are not funny. And I know that my story is not unique. It's unfortunate how common these tales are, no matter the age, generation, or culture that a woman is from. We are taught to maintain ourselves in perfect equilibrium, to not be too loud or too soft, too angry or too sad, and most importantly, to not trust ourselves. Because a woman who does not trust herself will confide in the decision-making of a man in a system ruled by men, which is a winning point for any person who wants to ensure that women are forced to become reliant on a system that does not want to serve them. Just as people of color, queer and gender non-conform people, and disabled people are not being served by a system they're forced to rely on. We must ask ourselves why it is so hard for our system to trust women to make the best choice for themselves with the thought and consideration that any decision deserves. If our government does not contain a woman and decide for them exactly when and how it is okay for them to make a choice, they worry that women will suddenly take off their masks and reveal themselves to be lazy, promiscuous, thoughtless, selfish, and downright silly women, making abortion their new birth control. How little trust is instilled in women that we are always deemed as individuals standing on a thin line between sanity and delusion, that we must be saved from ourselves, that our only safety net, our guide across the thin line, must be an all-knowing man. We ask you to respect women, to believe women, support them, and debate with them, while not feeling threatened by them, if possible. We need equality, so let us rise to your level. Not belittle us with the goal of making us feel so small that you could kill us under the weight of your own foot. We ask you to feel proud to call yourself a feminist, no matter your gender identity, because a feminist helps protect the worth of a woman and all those who are vulnerable without needing for one to be present to observe, direct, commend, and compliment you. Because feminism must maintain itself in private or public, light or dark. And that is why we've come here today. We have come to honor, celebrate, and
Abortion on demand.
How we feel about that? Good?
This means a pregnant person should have access to abortion without a waiting period. A pregnant person should have access to abortion without having to travel to another county or state, or to prove special circumstances such as rape or have any other cost-prohibitive restrictions. We oppose laws that attempt to hinder a pregnant person's access to abortion, therefore would in direct opposition to this demand. Would be in direct opposition to this demand. Indirect action, such as defunding clinics that provide abortion as just one of several medical services is also a hurdle to abortion on demand.
Exactly. Getting me look. So you might see up there end forced sterilization. A lot of people, when I'm like, hey, we should fucking end forced sterilization, are like, what do you mean forced sterilization? Well, this is about to be even more of a bummer. In 2013, the Center for Investigative Reporting found that at least 148, partially representing the DSA, which is a prison abolitionist org. I'm proud of that. I'm standing tall in that. But whatever your feelings about, caging people to take their labor, not actually rehabilitate them, hundreds of people, these are just the people we know about, are not only have their freedom taken away, they have their control over their body and their future, and their ability to choose when and if to have a family taken from them. That's garbage, and it's not being talked about, and it's a deep part of reproductive rights. Not just like choosing not to have a baby, but choosing to, being able to. What else do we want, Sophia?
Our next demand is gender-affirming Medicare for all.
Yeah, it is. How we feel about that?
Black and indigenous communities have vastly higher rates of maternal and infant deaths. And current Medicare for all proposals do not embrace care for gender non-conforming people at all. All people, regardless of race, income, gender identity, sexuality, need non-discriminatory, guaranteed free health care that covers the full range of life experiences from successful parenthood to birth control, abortion, and mental and behavioral access needs.
Hell yeah. You know what? Medicare for all, pretty much immediately. We got one more. Turns out, if people do choose to have children, turns out that children are very expensive because we live in hell world. So we want free childcare for all around the clock, because turns out not everybody just works the first shift. People work at night. It may shock you to learn. The average cost of childcare in the United States can range from 6 to 36% of a family's income. Holy shit. Those of you who have kids will not be surprised, but those of you who don't, solidarity. Again, depending on where you live, the typical family paying for childcare spends about 10% of their income on it. But the challenge is especially, the burden is heavy on low-income families and single parents. And in some states, a minimum wage worker would need to work more weeks than exist in a year for average price daycare. This is we're talking about housing costs getting out of control, just the cost to love and raise a family. That's so fundamental to social living. We have the money, we can do better, we're demanding better. Anyway, talking about bodily autonomy, talking about demanding better, we've got a next speaker for you. We have got someone here from the Sex Workers Outreach Project. Woo! Make some noise for SWAP! They're doing amazing work out here. SWAP USA is a national social justice network of organizations dedicated to the fundamental human rights of sex workers and their communities, focusing on ending violence and stigma through education and advocacy. Give it up for these amazing organizers!
Hi everybody, my name's Lisa from SWAP Seattle. Rosie Jimenez was practicing enlightened self-care when she sought out an abortion. When the mostly male legislators cut federal funding of abortions in 1977 with the passing of the Hyde Amendment, which is still in effect, they cut women off from the greater community, their country, the United States of America. Rosie's homeland lost its faithfulness. If she'd been able to afford an abortion with the government's help, she wouldn't have died. The USA abandoned women in 1977. It is indeed the mostly male lawmakers and their patriarchy-soaked female counterparts who have Rosie's blood on their hands. It is instinctive for us to medically intervene with ourselves. We live in this body. We know ourselves better than anyone else could possibly know us. Abortion, my friends, is a healing action. Abortion Abortion is a healing act. It is an autonomic response a woman has to the pathology of the new unwanted fetus. The pathology of the new unwanted fetus. Yet you criminalize an instinctive, unavoidable response. Yes, the abortion is a purely innocent action. It is primitive and keenly intuitive self-doctoring. Yet you curse my self-care and trample on my wise bodily autonomy. I have to bleed every month and clean up the messes of menstruation on my bedding and underwear. I constantly have to buy expensive tampons and pads. I am not essentially a baby producer, so I must buy costly contraceptive methods. My personal investment in my own body is costly and messy, and I must pay for it, usually without a male's help, and I must clean up its messes. Why am I not seen as the authority over my body then? Why should I not have the full right to the decisions about my messy, bleeding uterus? Uterus! If I may die because I'm forced to have a baby, wouldn't you try to keep me alive? Wouldn't I be the priority? If I know that I do not want a child, and the child and I would suffer if I do, wouldn't I be the priority? Isn't the point to preserve life? Do I not live a life? A life? My life? Yes, abortion is biological. Sex is biological too, yet you demonize and shame the sex worker. Unless commercialism is utterly destroyed, there will never be an end to commercial sex. The desire for sex is a strong and natural desire, a biological desire, a fervent desire from which commercialism does benefit greatly. Using my body to make money in the ever-tight economy is a genius idea, for sex is such an intrinsic need and money is indeed so damn fucking tight. Sex workers meet that need in all kinds of ways. We provide a service. It's an ancient, timeless one, the oldest profession. It's never been perhaps considered by all to be the greatest way to make money, but at least it wasn't criminalized. Under patriarchy, it is looked down upon or entirely ignored. But sex work means sex is a legitimate way for a woman to labor and make money from her labor. I stand here and I will not be ignored. I am a sex worker and I am proud. Some days I like my job, some days I don't. In what other profession are the workers expected to completely love their job? It has its ups, it has its going downs or its downs. It has its stigma. It attracts murderous Johns because of this patriarchal stigma and lack of protection as well. Stigma that insists I do not have autonomy over my body, insists that I am a bad woman for exercising my birthright to use my body as I see fit, and still that insists that I deserve to die for it. And here is where I lose my human rights. To a murderer, they think I deserve to die. I am void of human rights. It's criminalized for the same reason abortion is. Abortion is on the hands of every anti-sex work legislator, every anti-abortion legislator, anti-choice legislator, and their moralistic, patriarchy-soaked female counterparts. This is my body, for better, for worse, for indifferent. I will never be removed from my own body. I was born within it, naked and shivering, and I will die within it. I alone must attend to the urgent needs of this body, feeding it, bathing it, attending to its every biological need that I can, and I alone choose to do what I can do to use this body to survive. This is my birthright. I must have the final say as to, one moment, as to what I do with this structure of flesh, water, heat, uterus, pussy. Must I say it again? This is my body. Mine. Male legislators and their patriarchies, can we say that together? Patriarchy-soaked female counterparts assault my body by criminalizing abortion and sex work. They assault my choice. Indeed, the killings these legislators and moralistic, patriarchy-soaked women allow, murders of my colleagues, my sisters and brothers, and other non-binary sex workers, these condoned murders strip me of my human rights. Yet my body remains my own to tend, and the money must be made for me to survive, and so it must be my choice. Touch your body. Poke your body. You know, poke your tummy, pinch your forearm. Your body's so real. It's so real, and it's all yours. It must be all yours. Rosie Jimenez was exercising brilliant self-care the day she sought an abortion. Her patria, the United States of America, where she lived, had a bed. She bravely continued on, seeking what was rightfully hers, an abortion. She knew best what she needed to do, and she needed her patriot's help to do it. But the United States of America utterly failed this amazing woman. I demand justice for Rosie Jimenez's death. I demand full autonomy over my body. I demand to be seen as the authority over my own body. I demand to be able to use my body, my pussy, to make money. I demand an end to the conflation of trafficking with choosing to do sex work. I demand the decriminalization of prostitution. I demand federal funding for abortions. I demand the repeal of the Hyde Amendment, and I demand the full possession of my body. Mine.
Can I get a hell yeah, people?
Down with the patriarchy!
Yep.
Who here loves sex? Woo!
Yeah.
Who here loves a sex worker?
Hey!
Yeah! Who here loves the Sex Work Outreach Project?
Woo!
Oh, yeah. Next up, we have someone from Shama Sawant's office.
Yeah, Sasha?
Sasha Somer from the Shama Sawant's office.
She's up for re-election, folks. Vote socialist, baby. All right, give her a hand.
Hi, thank you for organizing this rally. Yeah, I'm Sasha. I'm a community organizer in Councilmember Shama Sawant's office. And like Councilmember Sawant, I'm also a member of Socialist Alternative, a nationwide organization of social and economic justice activists. Councilmember Sawant wanted to be here, but this rally is at the same time as the first public hearing on the city budget. Every year, the mayor puts forward a business-as-usual budget, despite the incredible wealth in our city and despite the mass housing crisis and deep inequality that disproportionately affects women, people of color, the LGBTQ community, and immigrants. Every year, Councilmember Sawant's office and many community organizations build the People's Budget movement to demand that the city budget reflects the needs of working and oppressed people in Seattle, not the billionaires and corporations. And through the People's Budget, we have won a number of victories for working people, the LGBTQ community, and people of color. So she wanted to be here today, but she is at the first hearing of the budget at the moment right now, where they're delivering 12,000 signatures for rent control to the rest of the city council. Rent control! Rent control! Yeah. All right, so yeah, we're here today to remember and honor Rosie Jimenez and everyone else who has lost their lives because of restrictions to reproductive rights like the Hyde Amendment. And we should remember how the right to an abortion was won in the first place through mass movements in the streets led by working women, which pushed a conservative Supreme Court to pass Roe v. Wade. And that's what it'll take to defend and expand reproductive rights again, to win fully funded health care for all. Recently, GM workers went on strike across the country, and the company retaliated by taking away their health care. Yeah. And we remember a few years ago the Hobby Lobby decision that made it legal for corporations to refuse to cover abortions in their insurance on religious exemptions. And I think both of these examples underlines the necessity of fighting back for universal Medicare for all that covers all healthcare needs, including reproductive care and the needs of trans community members. And while we're in a period of renewed attacks on reproductive rights, we're also in a period of renewed mass movements. From the wave of teacher strikes starting in West Virginia that swept the country last year for health care and wage increases, to the Me Too movement, which has brought down rich and powerful men who've been acting with impunity for years, which in turn inspired McDonald's and Google workers who walked out against sexual harassment on the job. To honor Rosie Jimenez means waging a fight against the for-profit healthcare system, against limits on the reproductive rights, on our reproductive rights, and for universal health Medicare for all. So yeah, just before I step down, women and LGBTQ people are disproportionately affected by the housing affordability and homelessness crisis in our city and region. women stay in abusive relationships due to the lack of access to affordable housing because moving out would leave them homeless. Women face higher rates of evictions here in Seattle than men. And LGBTQ youth face disproportionately high rates of homelessness. So I think, as I was talking about before, the fight for rent control, the fight for rent control is a fight for women and LGBTQ people, for rent control and to tax big business to build more affordable housing. So as I said before, our office is building a movement for rent control alongside over 20 other organizations. And 12,000 people have signed the petition. If you haven't signed it yet, come up to me after I get down from here. And solidarity. And I'll end with a chant. We started with one for rent control, and we'll end with, when women's rights are under attack, what do we do? When women's rights are under attack, what do we do? When women's rights are under attack, what do we do?
Hell yeah! And if you're not registered to vote for Shama or for Sean Scott in District 4, we've got voter registration cards over there at the DSA's table. Make it happen. Woo! All right, we have some acknowledgements to make here. I'm happy to make them. And then after that, do you guys want to hear some goddamn music tonight? I'm sure you've seen people with the big-ass drums and beautiful musics looking like they're ready to go. Do you want to hear some music? Yeah, you do. All right, first you're going to listen to some acknowledgements because we worked our asses off putting this on. So be grateful and listen, and then we'll freak out.
Thank you to all our sponsoring organizations who worked so hard to make this event possible. Gender Justice League, Radical Women, Red Union, Seattle Clinic Defense, Seattle DSA Queer and Feminist Caucus, and also the Sex Workers Outreach Project Seattle. Thank you very much to all of you.
Hell yeah, and we'd like to thank our endorsers who believed in us back to our event, such as the Answer Coalition, Community and Labor Against Fascism, Freedom Socialist Party, Huskies for NARAL, Juan Bocanegra, Northwest Abortion Access Fund, Organized Workers for Labor Solidarity, Party for Socialism and Liberation, Rosie's Machinist 751, Seattle Democratic Socialists of America, Seattle Gay News, Seattle Revolutionary Socialists, and the Seattle Women's Commission.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
And also we have a donation jar over here for the Northwest Abortion Access Fund. The Northwest Abortion Access Fund is an abortion fund serving Washington, Oregon, Idaho, and Alaska. Trained, compassionate volunteer advocates run the toll-free hotline. They help pay for abortion care by sending funding directly to the clinic, and they also help people get to the from the clinic. They are people traveling and they make sure that people traveling for care have a safe place to stay.
Yeah, they're an amazing organization. If you can dig deep, you've got a buck on you. They do amazing work. Like Washington, we're pretty sheltered from the Hyde Amendment here, luckily. But if you don't have the money to travel to a clinic to stay overnight, that's Care Access, and NWAF is there every step of the way. And now we're gonna hear from Rise Up Action Band, which is a band that brings emotion, empowerment, validation, and solidarity for spoken and unspoken voices. They do this by gathering together to play music and create spectacle at political events. It's a political event. Are you guys ready for some fucking spectacle? Rise Up Action Band!
Thank you, Rise Up Action Band. You guys were amazing. Next, we're going to have an open mic. So if anybody wants to come up and speak, please sign up over here.
Well, hi everybody. You know, I'm happy to get a chance to get to say a few words. I'm Patrick Burns. I'm a proud member of the Freedom Socialist Party. I came across an article in the Seattle Times that really disturbed me, and I'm a father and a grandfather, and I just want to leave a world where reproductive rights, medical rights, are taken care of, that we don't have to spend enormous amounts of money to have a healthy, full life. But so in September, on September 14th, the Seattle Times diligently reprinted a Washington Post story about a young Ohio high school grad who was acquitted of murder of her newborn child. She is one more young woman who was denied her right to make her own decision of whether or not she wanted to give birth. She did not want to, but the state of Ohio has gone out of its way to deny her constitutional right to abort a fetus. She ended up having a miscarriage. Under extreme duress, she buried her newborn in her parents' backyard. Nowhere in this article, nowhere in any of the accounts, is there any recognition that Ohio has some of the worst, the most restrictive abortion laws in this country. The article gives lip service to birth control and gives no mention of Ohio's reluctance to educate teens about birth control. In his acquittal of her, Judge Oda had the gall to rebuke her for the choice she made. Come on! She was denied her constitutional right to decide if she wanted to give birth or not. The state of Ohio, the Washington Post, the Seattle Times, and the judge with his public remarks to her are the pariahs because they all have victimized her and so many young women in these circumstances. And this is one of the reasons why we are here to fight for young women to have the right to make these personal choices for themselves. One more thing. I'm a union member. And until recently, unions in general have avoided publicly supporting reproductive rights for women. They have feared discord in their respective memberships. So I'm so glad that the Washington State Labor Council is saying this is no longer an option. And I hope they scream this loud and clear to each and every one of their affiliate unions. This is no longer an option. Unions have to publicly support women in their ranks to their right to reproductive rights and their right to abortion.
Hello, people. I'm Andrew Freeman. I'm with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. We're one of the sponsoring organizations. I don't have any prepared remarks. I didn't know I was going to be on the stage until about 5 minutes ago. I'll say a couple of things. When I was born in 1953, abortion was not legal. Abortion became, the laws against abortion became unconstitutional in the 1970s because the Supreme Court ruled it unconstitutional. How did that happen? Did the Supreme Court one day wake up and say, hey, it's unfair. Let's just give abortion rights to all the women in the United States because it's the right thing to do? I don't think so. the struggle for abortion rights predates World War II. And people have been getting illegal abortions and traveling to Mexico. And there was a groundswell movement, just like with the civil rights movement in the 50s and 60s. And the struggle heated up to the point that the ruling class decided they wanted the Supreme Court to give this right to women in the United States because they wanted to avoid a more serious struggle in the streets. And it never did make it onto the ballot. Not that working through the electoral process is always a mistake. It's a good forum to get our message out. But right now, the right wing is fighting to take this right away from the women in the United States. And as a socialist, I believe that all medical care should be free and of high quality on demand to everybody that happens to live here. And abortion on demand would be one of those rights. But we're not living under socialism yet. So the deal is, if we want to keep the right wing in this country from eroding our abortion rights, we have to get out in the streets and fight for it. I'm saying the struggle is what got us abortion rights. The struggle is what's going to keep us the abortion rights. And I'll just say, you know, we have to be out in the streets. We have to have more people on the streets. So how do we do that? We educate, we organize, we agitate, and we get out in the streets, and we keep struggling.
Hello, I'm Mariel. I've had an abortion. And that is a woo, because if I had not had that abortion, I would not be here today. I would have been a single parent, struggling, wouldn't have gotten my education, wouldn't have had family support, would have been on my own. And I'm not to say that my life would have been terrible. I'm sure I would have made it work. But I love my life today. I have 2 beautiful children with a wonderful partner that I just wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. So I'm so thankful that I had access to an abortion. My abortion was so, I was young. I didn't know how terrible access was at the time. I got pregnant. I got help getting Apple Care. Thank you, Washington. Decided not to have the child. Went into the clinic, had it, had support, didn't have to pay a fucking dime, which is good because then I wouldn't have been able to have one, right? If I had to travel, I wouldn't have been able to have one. I was lucky, and I'm one of the very few who have been able to have an experience like that. One very small reason, but when I told my partner I was pregnant, at the time, they were going to be moving to Hawaii, and they're like, I will support you financially, but I'm moving to Hawaii. That's okay, right? It's only the person who's pregnant that actually has to commit to being present, right? To doing their entire lives around this child. And it would have been totally okay for that dude to leave, send me money, and he did his part, right? Not to talk smack because he's wonderful, totally supportive through everything. He was a good guy. He was just saying I'm not going to be here. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do this either. So I'm thankful for what we have here, but it's a reminder that my experience is not the experience of, what is it now? 90% of counties don't have an abortion provider. 90% of counties in the United States do not have an abortion provider. Yeah. So, they say defend Roe, but Roe's gone. Roe is gone. So I am with Seattle Clinic Defense. Woo, yeah. We try to run a bit of interference so that way when folks are going to get the health care that they deserve, not just abortions, although I think we should be praising all the access to abortion that's here, but there's all sorts of reasons why people need to go to clinics, right? Whether it's diabetes testing, I had gestational diabetes, now I have to get tested. I don't have medical insurance, so I go to Planned Parenthood. They do it for free to make sure that I'm not getting any kind of additional diabetes. There's all sorts of reasons why people need to go into clinics, and then they come into these scenarios in Everett, oh my God, they come with a 6-foot cross and
try to hold sermon. They have the fake dead babies. And people are like, I'm just trying to see a doctor, trying to get my pap, trying to get my hormones. I'm just trying to live my life. So what we do at Clinic Defense is we help take up the space in front of clinics, so that way the assholes have to be far away. And people can actually just go into the clinic. So anybody interested in wanting to do that work, you can follow us on Facebook. There are also other groups in Tacoma Clinic Defense, and the Janes in Everett to help out there too. It's a wonderful way to get out in the morning and drink some coffee and be awesome. So that way folks like me who need to go have an abortion can have one without being attacked, harassed, shamed, all that good stuff. I don't have a way to wrap this up now, so I'm going to let it go. But free abortion on demand for everybody, bodily autonomy for everybody. It is our right, and we must demand it. Thank you.
This thing on. All right. Everybody give it up for testimonies, people coming up here. It's a brave thing to do. Just get up here, tell your story, bare your soul. And thank you so much we know it's a weeknight. We know it's kind of chilly. We know we're living in hell world and everyone's tired from their fucking job. But you guys showed up tonight to demand a better life, to demand better care, to demand more choice. And I want to thank you so much. That means so much to me.
Gosh, what else can I say that we haven't said already? Abortion access is so critical to everyone. Not only just women, but trans men, to non-binary people, to cis men, even to transgender women. This is really an issue that affects all of us. So thank you all for coming here and supporting us in this endeavor. And have a good night.
All right. Gonna let you guys go. Before we go, I want to hype you up one more time. Can you say, abortion is healthcare. Healthcare is a right. Abortion is healthcare. Healthcare is a right. Abortion is healthcare. Healthcare is a right. Abortion is healthcare.